Hey, if you missed last week in the Grave Robber series, let me just catch you up in just a couple of minutes here. First of all, last week we talked about Jesus' miracle of turning water into wine at the wedding in Cana. And really, we saw some really cool things there in that wedding. First of all, what we saw was that they had invited Jesus in. If he hadn't been there, the miracle wouldn't have happened. And a lot of times, we fail to just invite Jesus into our lives. We don't want him around, or we only want him for what he can do for us. And so that was important that they had him there. God can work wherever he wants to and whenever he wants to. But, you know, the people who invited Jesus into their lives in the New Testament saw him do all kinds of really cool things. And so it starts with a relationship with him. It starts with walking with him every day. And then you see that they brought the issue to him. Actually, his mother brought the issue to him. She came to him and said, "Hey, Jesus, we're out of wine. This is a big deal. It's going to be embarrassment to this family and to this bride and groom." And so they brought the issue to him. But one of the things that's really cool about it is she didn't actually give him any ideas of what she felt like needed to be done. She just brought it to him and said, "Hey, can you help? Can you help in any way?" And left it up to him to decide what to do. And then Jesus decided what to do and decided to do this crazy thing of, hey, let's pour 180 gallons of water in these huge jars. And the servants did it. And so one of the things you see is that they obeyed him. That a lot of times there's a human element when it comes to these miracles, that there's this aspect of obedience, that we have to do what he asks us to do. And a lot of times we're looking for God to bail us out with some sort of big miracle, but we're not actually following what he asks us to do day in, day out in many cases. So one of the things that is really awesome about this passage is that once the water was poured in and it was dipped out and taken to the master of the banquet made this really key statement. He said most people start out with the really good stuff, and then they kind of gets more and more disappointing as the banquet rolls on, because people have had a lot to drink. They don't really notice the difference. But he says, you brought out the great stuff. You brought out the good stuff in the end. And really, I think that could be a picture of what happens when it comes to kind of following the world's way, or whether we're following Christ's way. Because a lot of times the world offers us something up front that seems really awesome, but then as time wears on, we start realizing there's more and more problems with it, and really it's not the way to go, and it's not fulfilling, and it's not satisfying. But what we see when we follow Christ's way is sometimes it can be a little tough up front, but we find that the more we walk with him and the more we live our lives by his values, the more satisfying we find it to be. So that kind of brings us to our bottom line that we had this last week, and that is that Jesus brings fullness where there's emptiness, and he brings joy where there's disappointment. There was huge disappointment for this family and for this couple as they were running out of wine at their wedding. I mean, this is a multi-day event, and they're already running out of wine. And so this was going to be a huge embarrassment for them. They had a huge sense of emptiness. Literally, they were empty when it came to wine, and they had a huge sense of disappointment. But because they relied on Jesus, because they looked to Jesus for the solution, they found fullness where there was emptiness, and they found joy where there normally would be disappointment. And so that was the challenge this last week, is to begin to maybe look at some of the areas where you're not so full, or you're a little disappointed, and figure out, what have you been looking to for fullness? What have you been looking to for joy? And how can Jesus replace those things in your life, so that you'll find out that the joy and the satisfaction, the fulfillment, it only increases instead of decreasing as you look to the wrong things.